Okay, so we came to the final, to the last talk, the seventh talk of this meeting, by Adi Mizrahi. I don't need to introduce Adi. I'm sure most of you, all of you know it, but maybe you don't know one thing about Adi. I don't remember anymore. It was some 15 years ago, maybe less.
20.
Sorry?
20 years.
20 years, oh gee. 20 years ago, we really wanted very much Adi to come from Duke. He was a postdoc in Duke University, and he said that he wants to come to it was not ELSEC at the time, but to our center, but he needs a microscope that was not known at that time in Israel at all. It was the first microscope. It was called two-photon microscope that you heard from Lilach. She's using two-photon microscope, which became today an essential tool. But that time, this two-photon microscope was very expensive and very hard to get. So with the help of Yoram, we went to Chateau Lafitte and Yaakov Chai, and there was a group of the beginning of the Brain Circle. We told them the story about this fellow, Adi, that we really want very much, but he cannot come because this is his essential tool. He cannot function. He cannot do the research without the two-photon microscope. So we succeeded to buy it with the help of this Chateau Lafitte Brain Circle, before the Brain Circle, and that's why Adi is standing here to tell you about a change in title, because before it was Wired for Love, the neuroscience of attraction. Now it's the neuroscience of bonding. So let's see what you mean by these little differences.
Yeah, I downgraded from sex and attraction to bonding because the science is more serious about bonding. But let's dive in. Put my clock so I make sure I'm not over time. Okay, so thanks for coming after lunch. And today I will try to convince you that the study of bonding, of making bonds, is extremely important. From the first day that we are born, we need to bond to our mother or caregiver. To the last breath that we take, bonding is an essential part of life. And bonding is important because, again, it's fundamental for survival. If you want to survive, you need to bond to the animal that can provide food. If you need to reproduce, you need to find your partner to reproduce. And this bonding is shaping my choice, parenting, and social interactions. And actually, Lilach's talk was a very good introduction to social interaction, which I will also touch upon. And when I think of the importance of bonding, think of conditions where we have no bonding at all, things like loneliness. This is almost it's a big health problem in the world, particularly in the United States. It's scratching 50% of the elderly that are becoming lonely, so this has very strong consequences. We'll touch upon that. But also on the other side of this spectrum, think of the happiest moment you have had in life, if you can recall. These were also very often would be moments of bonding with your friends, with your children, with your family. So bonding is central. And as I said, it runs throughout life. First of all, let's correct, lonely as a wolf is very wrong. Wolves are one of the most social mammals, and they live in packs. And when somebody says a lone wolf, it's actually trying to convey the fact you are very different from the norm. And if you look at the whole animal kingdom, about 50%, in mammals, for example, about 50% of mammals live in very strong social groups, and 50% of the others are not. But importantly for us, especially if I sit here in front of Haggai, if you listened to the subtext of Haggai, it's critical and important that we do not forget that biomedical research and human health is important. So bonding, these social interactions are critical for humans and human well-being. Okay, so this is important to mention. Why is it interesting at all? And as I said, it's not true only for humans. It's true for about 50% of mammalian species. We also heard lilach. It's also important for fish, definitely for birds, and many animals around the animal kingdom. It's important, and there are all kinds of social interactions that matter. It can be between adults, between a pup and a mother, between a mother and a pup, within a pack, etc. And you'll see these prairie voles later on in the talk. Okay. So today's talk, we're going to go through a short journey of bonding at different times along life. And I will talk about different types of bonds. I will also talk about where in the brain there is activity which is important for bonding. But since, and again, Lilach touched upon that, because since the human brain has 100 billion neurons, we are, if we want to sink our teeth down to the molecules and the cells, we need to go to animals with a lower number of neurons. So often I will go to rodents. I'll talk about prairie voles or mice, where we have only 75 million neurons, but then we can choose, unlike Lilach, which is lucky and can look at the whole brain, everything in, we need to choose our parts, but still we can start to look at a better resolution that we can when we look at the human brain. And last but not least, I will tell you about what in the brain. Today, you will need to meet 3 important molecules that I will discuss. One molecule is dopamine. It's a small and extremely important molecule in our body. The other one is oxytocin. It's a larger molecule, also made in the brain. Dopamine is also made from neurons in the brain. And I'll also talk a little bit about an estrogen, particularly a molecule called estradiol. It's a smaller molecule known as the sex hormones, and these two are the evidence is very good, particularly in females, for oxytocin and estradiol. So, and dopamine is, like I said, it's a extremely important molecule that has to do with motivation and reward in the brain. And oxytocin and estradiol are more about priming and connections, and we'll go slowly on that. Before I start, a disclaimer. I try to keep intact with the human literature, but when we try to explain things like bonding, definitely love, etc., in humans, things get very complex very rapidly because all kinds of issues like cultural values, societal structures, etc. So if we want to talk about the foundational biological issues, it's becoming a little bit more much more complex in humans, and things like culture and sociology is something you can discuss with my wife as she presented herself. So I'm going to run back to biology when we try to explain some things. Okay, so let's start. As I mentioned, bonding starts at day 1. When we are born, we need to bond to our caregiver. This is true in almost all mammals. This is actually much more the most prevalent type of bonding. And we need immediately to recognize the source of food that will provide for us, and we can start to grow. Okay, and you find that across, like I said, the animal kingdom. And the bonding to the mother, in mammals, it has to be the mother because she's lactating and providing the food. The major sensory system that is used for bonding is actually olfactory, the sense of smell. When babies are born, they're not seeing very good, they're not hearing very good. Their somatosensory sense is important, touch, so that's why we want to hug our babies, but the sense of smell is critical for the recognition of the mother. Now, if some of you recall from last year I discussed, the lecture last year was about innate behaviors versus learned behaviors. So one would think that recognizing the mom is something that we are born with innately, and indeed there were some cases, and that's an extreme case, Some of you already saw this slide. This is the only slide from last year where the behavior is indeed intact. So it's automatic, it's instinctive, it's built in our genes, and that is pheromones in rabbits. Those of you who read your kids' stories about rabbits know that rabbit mothers are not very good mothers. They spend about 5% of the time in the nest, and the rest of the time they're outside with friends, gossiping, shopping, etc. So when they come, the few minutes that they are with the pups, they must be recognized by the pups. And what you see here is a baby rabbit pup. See, the eyes are closed, the ears canals are closed. It's a good machine of olfaction, and this is a port of a grass chromatography machine, and we can take the odor from the nipples of the mother and blow out the odor from the breast of the mother, and you can see that at some point, when the correct molecule comes out, this baby rabbit snatches onto the machine, the plastic here, but normally it would be the nipple of the mother, in order to get the milk. But this is the exception to the rule. In fact, most of the behaviors that you see, even early on, are not innate at all. And even if you look at recognizing the mother, for example, there is very nice and good evidence. Well, this will work. No, sorry. Yeah, this should work. No? Can you turn something is... The next slide. Okay, so in fact, learning in most mammals is thought to be by learning and not innate at all, okay? What the pups are learning is some kind of a signature, a bouquet, a signature odor from the mother before they first start to suckle at all. Okay, and there's good evidence for that. For example, if you take out a baby pup by cesarean surgery, so the pup never really smells its mother. Okay, so this is what we call a naive pup completely, and you wash the stomach of the mother and the nipples, they will never suckle. This is the number of pups that did not suckle. Most of them will not recognize the mother at all. Okay? However, if you give the same pup an odor experience with any odor, in this case it's the saliva of the mother, most of them will start to suckle very fast. This is true for other odors as well. This is an example with vanillin. Okay, so you can get out the pup with cesarean surgery, wash the mother, never, it's a naive pup, give it vanillin, they don't care. But if they have an experience, an association with the mother with vanillin, they will start suckle. And you can play around. This is a beautiful paper showing that you can, feed the mother with vanillin, give it vanillin, and the pups will find the mother. Without adding the vanillin, they will not. You can feed the mother with garlic and add garlic, and they will start suckle, etc., etc. So in fact, innate behaviors are often overrated in what we can do when we are born. And I think, or at least one of the part of the science which I will not talk about, is that learning is immediate. We start to learn immediately when we are born, and this comes about exactly directly when we are at day one, at day 0, okay? Exactly when the times that we are born. Yeah. Excuse me? Yes. Yes, they will recognize the first odor if the animal is caring for them. Once they are caring for them, if you will cuddle with it and take care of it with the odor, they will form the attachment. It's a little bit like the birds that, if the birds are born and they see you, they will start walking after you. Normally they see their mother. But they have to learn this association. Okay, and you can play with it. And of course, this time in life is extremely critical, and you can break it very rapidly. There is a short window of time when the bonding with the mother is critical. So in this case, in this experiment, that what they did is they actually induced adversity to the pup. So they were born, these pups were born, but then you can take the mother out and neglect the baby, okay, the pup for a few hours, and then this association doesn't form. And when this the immediate association at early age doesn't form, the pups remain away from the mother. This, you see here a silhouette of the mother. This is an anesthetized mother here. And all the pups, this is the location of the pups, they're away from the mother. And remarkably, when they started to look at which brain regions are important for this behavior, they found the amygdala in this case. And once they, in this case, they inhibit the amygdala, all the pups run directly to the mother and find her. And when they looked at the molecular signature of this behavior, they found that dopamine is important. In this case, it's playing a role both for the inability to bond and the ability to bond. Okay? I'm not showing you the ability to bond because this was actually a surprising result. This is a highly cited paper in the field. So if we want to summarize this short part of bonding to the mother at day 0, this system of dopamine, okay, this molecule dopamine, which is part of the reward system, is intact already at day 0. So this, and these you can find in a brain region, in this particular case called the VTA, never mind the acronym, but you can find it, one, in the baby, but you can also find it both in rodents and in the human brain. And dopamine, there is a pathway which is positive bonding, making a good bond to the mother, and there's a pathway which is related to the reward system, but to a bad experience, okay? But dopamine is the first molecule that kicks in, and in fact, and of course, if you have heard Chagai in the past, dopamine plays a role in many functions in the brain, and it's a very important molecule which we will continue to see. So dopamine is critical for the first bond in life, with which is the bond with the mother. And now we fast forward a few years to look at stormy adolescence. Stormy adolescence, it's a great period in the life of the animal. And there too, we must start making bonds. Okay, this is now a different type of a bond. And I just want to start by a short introduction to adolescence with a phenomenon called the growth spurt. You all know it as parents, those of you who have been parents. What you see here on the graph is the velocity of development, the height velocity, how fast the baby grows. It's extremely high early on in the first few months of life, but this is going down, going down, going down. By the age of 8 or 10, we are heading down, but then magic happens. This magic is called puberty, when the sex hormones rise, and then we have a spurt of growth. It's called the growth spurt, when many physiological changes occur in the body and the brain of animals. You see that females, girls are a little bit earlier in their growth spurt, that's the red, versus the blue one, and then it goes down, and by the age of 16 on average, and about 19 on average for boys, this stops and we stop growing altogether. So something dramatic is happening here during puberty that is changing. And in fact, when we look at bonding, there are some interesting things. First of all, while the dopaminergic system of the reward system and other systems, which I'm not talking about, are fully there at day 0, they actually continue to grow during adolescence in a region of the brain called the cortex. Okay, so the dopaminergic neurons, which sit deep in the brain, send their projections to different parts of the brain. The local deep parts of the brain are important for the reward, but the ones who are sending their dopaminergic projections to the cortex continue to grow during adolescence. So this same molecule that was used in early days is now a suspect for adolescence as well. Yes? Yeah, so the axons go and more receptors are going in the cortex. More dopaminergic receptors as well as the axonal projections of the dopaminergic neurons. Okay? So, yeah, let's go back. Sure. There is? No, there's no surge. This is the number of dopaminergic connections that are in the cortex. Okay, the dopaminergic neurons is intact when you're born. It's good for reward, like we saw for the mother. It's good for many other things, motor control and other things. But the dopaminergic neuron also has projections to the cortex, which is these axons are projecting late, and they're suddenly appearing more and more receptors for dopamine in the cortex. Okay? So this is one suspect. And you will see that biology is reusing the same molecules for the same concepts. And in fact, what is believed to be the stormy adolescence is what we call the mismatch between the cortex and the subcortical regions, the dopaminergic neurons inside and other subcortical regions. Those are fully developed. That's the higher structure. And during adolescence, the cortical stuff is lagging behind. And this mismatch between the full development of the cortex, the full development of the subcortical regions and the delayed development of the higher functional regions causes this mismatch. And therefore, the adolescent kids, they're confused, okay? Because their drive for reward is extremely high, it's potent, but their higher cognitive functions of how to behave with this reward is a little bit offset. So this is really an exciting period during stormy adolescence. The mismatch, it's during the puberty and adolescence. In humans, it's a little bit tricky because adolescence used to be decided by the Psychological Society from 12 to 18, but now it's actually earlier because of diet. So girls start to develop all kinds of physiological signs of puberty a little bit earlier. And the children are a little bit more childish in their behavior, so they actually extended the level of adolescence to about 25, not 45. This is actually an interesting thing. I teach in the university, I teach about adolescence. And when I start the class, my class are, they have been in the army. They've seen a few things in life. And I ask them, who thinks that he is an adult? Raise your hand. And, those are 23, 24. Many of them don't. I get maybe, mostly the people who are parents. You will not raise your hand for sure, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so this age of adolescence is actually characterized by what we call goal-directed behaviors. It's not only to find a partner and to have sex and to make a bond, but it's many other goal-directed behaviors. But one of the goals of the young people is for the boys to find a lady and for the lady to find a boy. And the first step of this is actually attraction. Okay? We need to be attracted to the other sex. And indeed, the way so for humans, sexual attraction is visual. There are actually all kinds of rules to what we find attractive and what we don't find attractive. It's about the symmetry of the face, an average face, etc. I plotted here what would maybe commonly be considered as attractive. It's not only in humans, though. Okay, so other animals look at the visual system as attractive. So this guy would be a highly attractive animal to the female, in birds, for example, and of course other animals. Attractiveness to the other sex goes to the visual system. But as you remember, in many animals, smell is the dominant cue for attraction. Okay, it's not the vision. We don't care how she looks or how he looks. We care how they smell, and this is true also for our favorite laboratory animal, the mouse. Smell is critically important for attraction to the other mate, for males for females, and the other way around, and females to males. Okay, so now this is the only 2-3 slides that I'm putting from my own lab. This is the work of Hadar Sagi, a PhD student in the lab, and she's interested in studying the area of libido, of attraction, of sexual attraction in the brain. It appears we know it for male. We know where it is for males, but we do not know where it is in the female brain, surprisingly. So she's doing the following experiment. She's looking at an open space assay. So we let the mouse run around for 10 minutes. We then introduce a neutral odor into the cage. In this case, it's distilled water. And then after 5 minutes of distilled water, we insert a different odor. She's doing it with many odors. In this case, female mice love male urine and vice versa. And you can see it in the graph here. Okay, so here I quantify how much time does the animal spend sniffing in the male urine versus divided by the distilled water. One would be not interested at all. And you can see that the female mice is about interested 2 to 3 times more in the urine than in the water. And this is how we quantify attraction. Not surprisingly, when you check that in young animals, you know, they run around just as well, but they're just before puberty. You see it's flat. Now, this is not surprising. Before puberty, the boys don't like the girls don't like the boys. There's no attraction at all. Okay? So this is not very surprising, but we wanted to understand the biological basis of this shift from females attracted to males to females from females not attracted into females attracted to males. And in this case, Hadar was checking the role of estradiol. And as I told you, this is now we're moving to adolescence in mice. Actually, puberty in mice is between day 30 to day 40. So these 15 years are condensed into about 2 weeks. But in terms of the dynamics of the estrogen, the estradiol, indeed, the estradiol is low before puberty. Then it peaks, and then it remains high and cycles with the estro cycle, like the monthly period in humans. And we thought this rise in estradiol may have a contribution to this sexual attraction, to the transition from non-attracted to attracted. And what Hadar did is 2 experiments. She took out the ovaries of the prepubertal mice at 24, and therefore the estradiol level will be flat throughout life, or they let the animal develop, and then at 45 days they did an ovurectomy. It's denoted here as OVX, and the estradiol levels will go down, and then tested the mice like you saw before. So surprisingly, when you take out estradiol, when you take it from high levels to low levels, the interest, the attraction of the females remains similar, which means that estradiol is not important for this attraction at all. Take out estradiol high, you take it down, doesn't matter. Females are still interested in the males. Surprisingly, however, when you take out estradiol before puberty, the mice do not develop the sexual attraction to the other strain. Okay? And indeed, if you add estradiol to the same group, you also don't develop an attraction. So it's this period of development that estradiol is rising, that the brain is developing circuits that support this transition from non-attracted to attracted. This is a phenomenon in biology that is well known, that some hormones are important for the development of the brain, but not actually to its function as adult. Okay? So now we know that estradiol is important for this phase of development, and we're now hunting the circuits that are important for this transition from an attraction, from a non-attracted animal to an attracted animal in females. Okay? And our link is the estrogen receptors. Okay? We are hunting now. Hadar's PhD is to hunt after the neural circuit that is expressing these estrogen receptors, and hopefully in 2026, if I'll get an invitation by Idan, we will have an answer. Where is the libido part in the brain for females? Because we know it for males. Okay? We actually talked about it 2 years ago, but I'm not going to test it. Okay? Okay, so we have been attracted, fine. We ask the girl for the boy for a date, or vice versa, and then we need to decide to bond or not to bond. This is the next part, the next bonding part of life I want to mention. Okay? And in fact, bonding or much of the biology that we know about bonding has been studied in a unique animal called prairie voles. And these little rodents, they form monogamous interactions. So the boy will find the girl or vice versa, and they will live happily ever after for all of their days and will not switch partners. Okay? Monogamous interactions are unique in the animal kingdoms. Many animals like to switch. Humans actually, monogamous interactions are prevalent. Again, this has to do with cultural issues and things of that sort. So the first set of biological papers, this goes back 30 years ago, have been done on these prairie voles, on these animals that form monogamous interactions. There are also some mice that form monogamous interactions. And in fact, a molecule was found called oxytocin. And oxytocin, you will not be surprised, is also interacting with the dopaminergic neuron system that we talked about before. And in fact, when you look about the importance of pair bonding in prairie voles, both the dopaminergic system is important as well as the oxytonergic system in the brain. Okay? So we now met a second molecule called oxytocin. And this will work. Now, maybe I need to switch the battery here. Can you turn to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so in fact, the story is a little bit more complex. We find very similar data in humans. We don't have the resolution that we have in rodents that we can go into the brain of humans, but there is good evidence that dopamine is important both for male and female, both in rodents as well as in humans. And oxytocin particularly is a molecule that is important for the bonding, okay? So dopamine is for reward, and oxytocin is important for bonding. And indeed, there's a famous paper on humans on oxytocin that they play a game in economy, actually transfer money from one to another. And if there's a nasal spray that one of the participants can sniff oxytocin, and if you sniff oxytocin, you trust your friend more, and people actually transfer more money. This caused a lot of fuss in the field. And oxytocin, I think Lilach mentioned that, is considered the love molecule, okay? Which is, and I need you to help me with the slide, sorry. Okay, the third type, you have this? Okay, fantastic, thanks. The first type of bond, the third type of bond I want to discuss is the bond between the mother and the baby. Initially, I talked to you about the bond between the baby and the mother, but this is not symmetric. The bond between the baby and the mother is done through the dopaminergic system, but the bond between the mother and the baby is done by the oxytonergic system. And in fact, again, another principle in biology, the biology is reusing the same molecules. Oxytocin is actually a hormone that is coupled to milk ejection from the breast during breast feeding, okay, together with prolactin. But it's not only participating in making milk for the baby, but also to form the attachment to the baby, okay? So this is also known in humans. For example, there are specific mutations in the oxytocin receptor in humans that make them more maternal or less maternal, okay? You can do a genetic screen and find some correlation with some genes that have to do with the oxytocin receptor. Yes? Yeah, so still, the interaction and the association with the baby will be induced by oxytocin, but will not participate in the, But again, under the natural conditions, these molecules go up and do many things together. Okay. And in mice, perhaps a nice paper, again, that is highly cited in the field, is once we have genetics, we can play around with the oxytocinergic system in the brain. So if on the y-axis here, you can quantify how well the mother is interacting with the pups. Dams are extremely efficient animals, but virgins are not very good. Okay, virgin mice will not take care of the pups. In fact, in the wild, they will actually attack them. So if you inject saline, they will not attack. But if you inject oxytocin, they will come parental. And if you go in with fancy tools to just increase the activity of the neurons in the brain that release oxytocin, they will also become maternal. Not fully, it cannot explain the full maternal behavior, but it certainly does increase the efficiency of maternal behavior. And as I mentioned, oxytocin is considered the love molecule, both in pair bonding as well as in the maternal to the baby attachment. So that's the third type of bond I wanted to share. The point I want to make here is oxytocin is well established in females. And the question is, what about males? Do males, when they attach to females, also use oxytocin? And when fathers, there are several animals which are fathers and are good caregivers, will they also use oxytocin as the molecular agent to induce these changes? And the answer, surprisingly, is no. Oxytocin is not involved in the male's way to attach to a female or to its pups. There's another molecule called vasopressin, which is important for males to be monogamous in prairie voles. And in fact, I don't have time, but in the last 5 years, I have a postdoc in the lab that is showing that prolactin and not oxytocin is important for fatherhood behavior as opposed to motherhood. So biology and nature found different strategies to solve similar problems. Okay, so one concept is the same molecules are used again and again throughout life, are used for different purposes, and males and females have found different pathways to solve similar problems, in this case to be monogamous, and in this case to attach to the pups. Of course, there are differences in these interactions and these interactions between males and females, but those are more details that we can discuss later. Yes?
I have the experience of a baby crying and milk coming up in the breast of the mother.
Yeah.
What is the molecule that it?
Yeah, so when the baby cries, the sound of the baby, it increases the levels of prolactin, which is making the milk and ejecting the oxytocin. The baby cries, induces the oxytocin rise, which is ejecting the milk. There is a direct connection between the sound of the baby crying and the increase in the oxytocin and its effect on the mammary glands. Okay. This is well established. Okay, so males are different. Good. And for the last, first of all, before I go to the last example, of course you understand that I give you only part of the story. Okay, I talked today a little bit, I gave you an example of dopamine, which is again critical molecule throughout life, used in reward and pair bonding. I also gave you oxytocin, the love molecule we talked a little bit about, and I also mentioned on the way estradiol, which actually sets up the brain. But in fact, there are many other molecules that are important for pair bonding. And this is, a full course in the university to go through the contribution of these. It's either these very small molecules that we call neurotransmitters, or the hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estradiol. These larger molecules, there are peptides, and even larger molecules like prolactin, which I mentioned, which is used in fathers to make a bond. Okay, 2 last points, and I'm done. The first point is that So we talked about bonding of the baby with the mother. We talked about bonding between male and female. We talked about bonding between the mother and the baby. But once we make bonds, we want to maintain them throughout life. And indeed, the bonds, remain crucial throughout life. I think also Lilach mentioned this, okay? These social interactions, there's good data that they buffer against cognitive decline, definitely depression. The statistics are very good that strong ties increase survival rates of humans. This is all data and statistics from human, and generally are healthier throughout life, okay? So bonding throughout life is critical. And you see this, the importance of this, when bonds are broken. And this can be at any age. When the bond between a pair is broken, either by divorce or somebody has passed away, or even isolation, it increases health risk, for example, for heart disease, stroke, and depression. And loneliness, listen to this, loneliness alone, the data is so strong that it is as harmful to health as smoking or obesity. The data about smoking is crystal clear in the medical community, and obesity as well. This is not good for your health by all means, and loneliness has the same numbers, okay? So loneliness is a big health problem in the Western world, and we have to take it with, to take care of it, or the loneliness and our social interactions throughout life. But there is good news. Yes, Chaim? Yes, I don't think they know the actual molecular or brain signature. Maybe. I'm just saying that if you look at the statistics of the medical community, when people become lonely, there's a good correlation with health risks, and some of them, it's not my expertise, okay, so I didn't dig into the studies well, but people that do get, even when they're sick and they get social support and bonding, they do better than when they are alone, for example, okay? But, oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, very severe effects once you isolate a mice. This is age dependent. So if you isolate a mouse when it's born, it's catastrophic, okay? Catastrophic for later on. If you isolate a teenager, adolescents, it has mice as well, but humans as well, okay? The effects of social isolation during adolescence has huge impact for later in life. Things you cannot fix later on. You cannot fix. The earlier it is, the worst outcomes it has. But I'm saying that bonding is important throughout life, okay? Not only in young age. And I want to take 1 minute to show you this short clip, and then we have one more slide and I'm done. This is from Castaway. I'm sure many of you have seen this. The storyline is that this guy, Chuck, which is played by Tom Hanks when he was young, finds himself all alone on the island and has to cope. And he's lonely, of course, because he's on the island. And to alleviate his loneliness, he finds a volleyball, and there's an interaction with the volleyball. So I just want to show you 1 minute with this. This is the volleyball.
And what is your point? Well, we might just make it. Did that thought ever cross your brain? Well, regardless, I would rather take my chance out there on the ocean than to stay here and die on this shithole island, spending the rest of my life talking to a goddamn volleyball! Shut you up. Wilson! 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 Oh, never again! Never again! Never again! You're okay. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, so what did we see here? And that's a good news, okay? And the roots of it are in the brain. Because the brain is wired, you saw there are wires already that support bonding from early age, and also for later on. But when some adversity comes in, like loneliness, we thrive for bonding. So we make up imaginary friends. And the brain is driving us to create those bonds. Furthermore, if we have a bond which is in danger, it activates stress responses, or in males, for example, aggressive responses, aka jealousy, for example. So a bit of a level of being jealous is good. So if I have a partner and there's an attractive male coming in, the male partner, which is bonded in monogamy, will start to be aggressive towards the competition that's coming in. So the brain immediately activates programs that have to do not exactly with these not exactly with these brain circuits, with other circuits that I will not talk about today, which are continuously thriving to promote bonding interactions. Okay? So, to summarize, Aya told us that summaries are important. We talked about bonding throughout life, from day 0 to the end of life, how important it is. There are wires in the brain built for bonding from day 1 throughout life, and we thrive for bonding. And when the bonding is not there, the brain is pushing us towards, 1, to keep the bond, to maintain the bond, and if the bond is lost, then go to a creative way to have strong bonds. So thank you for listening, and I'll take any questions.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. 2 questions. One, you didn't talk about friendship. Is it the same mechanism? And the second question is, does it become harder to bond after puberty? Or is it declining, or does it stay the same?
Yeah, so first of all, your first question, I know the answer. The second one, I'm not sure I have an answer for you. So about friendship. So first of all different types of bonds have similar underlying biology as far as we know. The strongest and best interactions are ones who are long-lived and reciprocal, that you're giving, but you're also getting back. So this is very often with a partner, with your monogamous partner, which goes for many, many years, but this can also be brothers, this can also be children, but there are, different intricacies of separation. For kids, for example, at one stage, they betray you and they find the love of their own life and they leave home, so it's very sad. But this connection can stay strong and very healthy and important for our health throughout life. But the underlying biology, as far as I know, is similar. And the best interactions are the long ones and the reciprocal ones, the ones that you give and you get back. The second question was throughout age.
Yeah, if the ability to bond declines after puberty.
Yeah. So I think the skill to bond between adults, as I said, is maturing during development. And I guess, I don't know the science, this for sure I know, okay? That this skill, because you need both to manage your basic subcortical reward circuits with higher cognitive function, okay? You're no longer you can no longer be driven just by immediate rewards. Some do, but maybe it's not good for healthy long-range relationships. So the cognitive aspects of how to interact is critical. My gut feeling, okay, my mother was a therapist, so I think the numbers I know is that when a patient comes in very late, my mother was a sex therapist to people who could not find relationships. So in a way, I'm getting closure here with my late mother. But when the patients that are not able to bond come in at a later age, 40 and up, it's a very different kind of treatment, but they can still, but you need to teach them. So they need very close guideship on how to perform bonds. So I guess the answer is yes. But yes.
Young children have create a bond with their little special animal or little doo-doos and things like that. Is it the same molecule that creates a bond later for friendship or mates, and / the same bond that was created by what's his name? The actor with Wilson, Tom Hanks. With Wilson.
So I can't back my answer with science because I'm not well versed in this literature. But my gut feeling would be yes. I mean, dopamine is important, oxytocin is important. Whether it's exactly the same, there must be small differences because the Wilson ball doesn't give back as much as a human being would give. But
the idea is just when you have a little teddy bear, it doesn't give you back.
Yeah. I would guess, I don't know the answer, but I would guess it's the same biological mechanisms.
And if we push a little bit further, when humans bond with machines, with AI, we see more and more children currently who are saying that actually they'd rather talk with AI, character AI, or whatever when they go back home rather than their parents or even friends. Because and there is they are answering. It's not like a do-do, but
not only answering, they're very kind to us and polite to us, like we heard from Leon. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe Leon is more equipped to answer what's the psychological interaction with AI. But again, I would think it's the same biological mechanism of reward. Again, when I'm looking at the brain circuits and the molecules, there's no magic, or definitely evolution did not shift us to speak with ChatGPT. This is a new thing in evolution. And these molecules, you can find them in fish, you can find them in birds, you can find them in across the animal kingdom, which is driven by millions of years of evolution. I'm trying to convey that it's really a powerful bonding for human beings is an extremely powerful issue that is important for our well-being.
Adi, I think you said, if I understood correctly, that there was a different molecule involved in attraction, the part in bonding, which is attraction between males and females. In that case, how do you explain the very strongly loving homosexual couples?
So first of all, I'm sorry, I don't know, and I cannot explain. But indeed, in male, and when I say male, it's the classical definition of male with an XY chromosome and the rest. I think we talked about this in length last year, okay, because this is also a complicated story. But at least in classical heterozygote interactions, it's a different molecule. It's vasopressin. It's talking to the dopaminergic system and the oxytocinergic system. They're all somewhat connected. But in a homosexual relationship, I frankly have no idea. I don't think there is good evidence in humans at the level of the examples that I gave here. So I don't know. Sorry.
homosexuals mice?
Mice?
Then you can ask this question on mice rather than on humans.
So there are animals in the animal kingdoms that have male-male interactions. There are famous monkeys that go over all around, but your classical strains that we use in the lab, not that I know of, that are male-male interaction.
Christine?
But again, you guys are pushing me outside my comfort zone. Not because I'm, I'm fully happy to talk about unpolitically correct issues, but at the era of Trump. But
no, I do this very interesting, and we look very much at human-to-human bonds. But now, just sort of in the wake of a lot of maybe perhaps I wouldn't say surge, but increasingly social bonds coming into question with adolescence, isolation, so forth. What about human to animal bonding, or for example, that didn't come out correctly, but friendly, domestic pets.
Yeah, your dog, etc. Again, it's a variation of the question
bonding.
that we got earlier. I think the underlying biological mechanisms are the same. Okay, you need your love from your partner, from your kid, from your dog. Of course, you get different things from different ones. And I had a disclaimer about the complexity of humans. Okay? I don't feel comfortable studying humans. Mice are easy. They don't have all the variations, so it makes things a little bit easier.
In the case of neurological condition that affects bonding, like I'm thinking autism, obviously, but there might be a few other ones. Do you see impact on the oxytocin and dopamine, or it's completely unlinked?
Yes, so I'm not aware. I need to actually read more about this. So I did not go into health conditions beyond loneliness, which is a very common topic nowadays. Again, in modern society, especially after COVID, which sparked up so loneliness is considered a problem, and there's a lot of literature on that. I'm not aware of there may be, but I don't know. And again, my gut feeling is yes. Millions of years of evolution have dedicated these molecules to reward, to strengthening the connections, and when we come from different aspects, we land on the same molecules and the same brain circuits. Yes.
If your mother were alive today,
Excuse me?
if your mother were alive and working today
Yes.
with patients who have difficulty in falling in love, could you give them dopamine?
If you can give them dopamine. So again, I think the answer is a little bit more complicated because dopamine has different receptors. Some of the receptors, particularly a receptor called the D2 receptor, is known to go up when you form the bond, but other receptors of dopamine are known to maintain the connection and decrease it to bonding with other people. So one receptor has to go up, one receptor has to go down. So my gut feeling is just giving dopamine as an answer. For the long run, it will not be very good. Okay, so for example, there are drugs, particularly MDMA, which has its good PR in the last several years, although several months ago it was not approved by the FDA. Yes. So the vibe in the community is that this is the solution to everything. You take MDMA and you become friendly. This increases your ability to make bonds, and it's the solution to loneliness, depression, you name it. But then the medical community took it seriously, did the clinical trials, the side effects, etc., and eventually they decided that it will not be approved. So I don't think there will be a single molecule solution to solve a problem. And my mother did not subscribe. She was a psychologist, not a medical doctor, so she did not subscribe drugs. Yeah, so it's
there were very bad reports about people that were treated with MDMA, and because MDMA actually strongly enhance your trusting relationship with the other, and the other was their therapist abused it for sexually abused it. So actually the community felt that it is completely, this time the FDA was correct in not allowing it. Not that the FDA is all the time correct, but especially now.
So again, this is a great example of where society and human issues are, breaking our stories. Because MDMA can be strong, but the other partner is abusing it, and their humans are just complicated.
Very complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Adi.